Okay, I believe I'm live. What's up, fellas? What is up? Let me get my windows right here. Yeah, I'm live, posting the Zoom information in the chat and pinning it so that anyone can join if they like. I believe I'm live. What's up, fellas? I need to turn that off so I'm not listening to myself. Yeah, feel free to join, say hey, give your opinion, do whatever you want. You don't have to share your face to share your opinion. There was some really great feedback in the comments of the last video, of the last live stream, and it would be great to get some live feedback. One of the guys in particular, I hope he calls in. And I actually want to talk about some of those comments from last week. In fact, I might just pull them up here. No, I won't. I'll just talk about them. So one of the comments was talking about the boxes in the Serapeum and how they likely got down there, because I said I didn't know how. And it was suggested that they used rollers and pulleys. So, you set up an anchor at one end of the hallway, you have some ropes hooked around it, and then you are able to pull the box. You walk away from the box moves up on the rollers, and then you readjust and do that in the corner. Sounds pretty feasible to me. And then as far as lowering it into the the final resting place, I guess they excavated out that chamber and then filled that chamber back up with sand so it was level with the hallway, dragged the box onto it, and then just scooped out the sand. Again, sounds pretty reasonable. Doesn't require any high technology there, and the Serapeum is quite impressive. So with a bit of creativity and knowledge, you can really get a lot done. Let me adjust my chair here slightly. Without any high technology. In another comment, and this is what I'm going to be mostly talking about today, was claiming that I was misrepresenting Ben's arguments. And had I made that video a year ago, I would have been very confident that I wasn't misrepresenting his arguments. But I'm actually not too sure what Ben's arguments are anymore. I think they may have changed a bit since the vases, because the vases have significantly changed things. These vases, which I have, I actually don't remember which, there we go, the schist disc here is an example of one of these just exquisite stoneware pieces from 4,500+ years ago. Schist is like a harder version of slate, essentially. So this is a very flaky material. Carving it is not easy because it just wants to, like, getting this type of shape, these compound curves, very, very difficult to do with schist, and it's incredibly thin, this disc. It's also pretty large. I have here this image, which has a person next to it. You can see this thing is a pretty big disc, and we have no idea what it was for. I believe the museum's explanation here, they're suggesting it's some kind of water pump perhaps, but these wouldn't really move water the way this is shaped. But I believe the museum's explanation is that it's a lotus flower vase, that there was a flower right in the center of there, and that's what this was created for. And this was created with stone tools or potentially copper tools, but I think this is even pre-Copper Age. And so Ben's arguing that the dynastic Egyptians did not have the ability to create that stoneware. That stoneware is inherited, according to Ben. And I don't know if he's put a firm date on that inheritance, but he seems to favor the 12,000 years ago Atlantis date, and seems to suggest not necessarily definitively say they're that old, but suggest that they're 12,000 plus years old. I think that's unlikely, just because 12,000 years is a really long time. But he has acknowledged, I don't know where he would stand on the statue I was talking about last week, this statue here. I don't know if he would credit this to Ramses or not. A year ago, I'm pretty confident he wouldn't have. But he, again, I'm not sure what his arguments are anymore, because this is clearly an incredibly high quality statue. It is not absolutely perfect. I went over these details on the hat. You can see these circles clearly are not perfect. The pattern of the circles is not perfect. Even the centering of the concentric circles within each other are not perfect. But it's still an absolutely exquisite statue. And I think I demonstrated last week pretty convincingly that this writing in that cartouche right there says Ramses. That is Ramses' name right there. I don't know what the rest of this is saying, but that says Ramses. And it's on that high part of the ridge. And so it's not possible that this was added later. It's not possible someone came in and ground those ridges flat and carved that later. This was contemporary with this statue. If anyone disagrees, please, call in and give your opinions as to how Ramses, claimed this statue without creating it himself, because I don't see how that's possible. And if Ben is acknowledging that a statue of that quality is possible, I really am getting lost in Ben's arguments, especially because he does quote, or not quote, but he shows Christopher Dunn's picture, which is a statue of Ramses that he claims is a 50% overlay. It doesn't appear that way to me. I would love to see proof of that being a 50% overlay. It looks like a pure mirror image to me, as far as I can tell. And I have a bunch of other pictures of Ramses pulled up. This is a sandstone statue here. Clearly the same face. That certainly looks like the same guy to me as that, and that's sandstone. So Ramses definitely made that. There's no sandstone statues lasting 12,000 years in 7,000 years ago. The Sahara Desert wasn't a desert, it was a rainforest, and then it took a few more thousand years to turn into the actual desert that we see today. This is, I believe, that same statue, just closer up on the face there, so you can really see the details. They always have these very crisp lip ridges, just something I noticed on Ramses statues. And I pulled up a bunch of other... This is a Ramses statue. The face looks a bit different here. So there are some examples where the face isn't identical. To me, it still looks like him. Maybe he's just older in this statue. There were a few I wanted to pull up specifically. This one, and sorry for... I should have been a bit more organized with my tabs here. This statue, again, I believe is limestone. And where's I had it pulled up. Do I no longer have it pulled up? Looks like I don't. All right. Well, whatever. This here, you again can see distinct faces on each one of these statues. You can't really make out the details that well. These are all four supposedly Ramses. Again, they look a bit different from the Ramses face. The nose is certainly wider on this. I think that was a stylistic choice. And those are, again, sandstone, so clearly actually made by Ramses, and they're exposed to the elements. This is a granite statue of Ramses, and I think this might actually... No, that's not Christopher Dunn's image. God damn, where is the... there was a specific thing I wanted to point out. So this statue is, again, not granite. Same as this statue here, not granite. The point I'm trying to make here is that these are all the same exact face. That is clearly Ramsey's face. It's the same style. It's the exact same face as here. Okay, so it really seems to me that the Egyptians, this was 3,000 years ago, were perfectly capable of working granite exquisitely. And yet there is a clear distinction between those statues and the vases. There's another level of perfection. So trying to establish, baseline here. What can we actually know? What can we try to, make a theory on, and then what are just maybe beliefs that there's not necessarily evidence to support? So I see no reason to question any of the claims Ben is making about the vases. They appear to be legitimate claims. I mean, he's sharing the files openly. I haven't seen anyone really try to dispute anything he said seriously. So there are 4,500+ stoneware out there that is perfect to a level that we typically don't achieve today in just about anything, much less common household items such as a vase. And so that certainly would suggest that there was a high level of technology in the production of those vases, and potentially a higher level of technology than we have today. And to support that, there's also core number 7, which is a literal piece of trash, a very, very interesting piece of trash. Core number 7 is a core from, here's, drawing of it. And what's interesting about this is a few things. One, you see that the cut marks are tapered here. They're more narrow at the bottom than they are at the top, which is not how tube drills today work. Tube drills today are just a tube, and it has some carbide on the end of it, and it drills down, and you have a perfect cylinder both on the exterior of the cut and the interior of the cut. This is cylindrical, which is, or not cylindrical, this is conical. I have no idea what tool made this. As far as I know, no one has any kind of idea what type of tool cut this to make that conical shape. And that's not even the most interesting thing about it. If you can see the lines, let me try and open this up in a bigger image here. Open image, new tab. All right. Whatever, that's what it's given me. Those lines, which are quite clearly defined, you can see them in this relatively low resolution image going all the way around. They show a cut rate that is significantly faster. I don't want to use, faster isn't the right word. It's removing significantly more material in a single pass than we're capable of removing today. So the way our saws, when we cut granite today, like I said, we have some type of carbide on the saw blade, whether it be titanium carbide or diamond carbide or tungsten, whatever. Very hard material on the edge of the saw blade, and it's moving at a very high RPM. So say you have 100 teeth on the saw blade and it's going 1,000 RPM a minute, 10,000 RPM a minute. So you're getting, 100,000, a million cuts from each one of those saw blades into the stone per minute. but each one of those cuts is removing an almost microscopic amount of material. It's a very, very small amount of material removed from each rotation of each tooth. But because it's rotating so fast, we can cut through it rather quickly and efficiently. We don't have the material science to remove a millimeter of granite per rotation, which is what these lines here suggest. And core number 7 is not entirely unique. There's a lot of tube drill marks at Egypt, and you can see those very similar striations with very similar spacing, about a millimeter. And core number 7 is just, a lot easier to actually record. You can roll that in clay, and you can have a perfect tracing of the lines and such, rather than trying to get lines from the interior of a tube drill. But we don't have that material science today. So the vases are showing a material processing that is beyond our standard material processing abilities. I won't say that we can't make those vases, but we certainly don't make those vases or anything close to them. And then core number 7 and other cut marks in Egypt also depict a rate of material removal that is not possible with our material science. We don't have anything hard enough, or we can't make the stone soft enough, because I don't know exactly what technique was used, but we can't remove material from granite at a millimeter per rotation, per cut, which is what they were doing in ancient Egypt. So as impressive as this statue is, where is it? Where is this statue here? It doesn't. I'm not sure it's displaying the same level of technology as those vases and things like core number 7, but you seem to see there's tube drills in a lot of things in Egypt, and a lot of the granite boxes, which the granite boxes themselves are rather interesting. Getting a perfectly flat cut on the outside of a box is not anything too impressive, but getting a perfectly flat cut on the inside and meeting that with another perfectly flat cut, and then also another perfectly flat cut on the bottom, and creating that very, very tight 90-degree angles and corners in those granite boxes is incredibly difficult to do, and it's done very precisely. There's evidence of tube drills, I believe, actually in the sarcophagus in the Great Pyramid, if I recall correctly, the granite sarcophagus. And so it's really hard to try and reconcile all of this all at once, because you have the mainstream narrative, which is that they were barely in the Copper Age when the Great Pyramids and a lot of this stuff was made, and then they were I believe in the Bronze Age, potentially during Ramses' time, and then you have the vases, which are clearly not a Copper Age. At the same time, or very shortly after you have those vases, 4,500+ years old, you do have the alabaster vases, which were talked about by Ben. And these were 4th dynasty. Let's see, this is what I'm looking for here. These were made in the 4th dynasty, this right here. Okay, and this is what these alabaster vases looked like. And you can see just visually, even in that low-res image, or that small image, that is very far from perfect. The top of this is wavy. You know, it's a beautiful vase, but this is what you would expect from a Copper Age civilization trying to make a vase. And they have depictions of those alabaster vases and how they were made by putting stones on sticks, and then they would, you know, hollow out the vase from the inside using those stones tied to sticks. And there's a massive difference between the, you know, schist disc and this. There's a massive difference between even, you know, this statue of Ramses here. God, I'm losing track of my tabs here. Which is, granted, 1,000 years later, but there was also very impressive granite work in the 4th dynasty as well. And even earlier than the 4th dynasty, you know, you have the Sumerians building stuff like this. This was, I believe, 4th dynasty or maybe even 3rd dynasty, the triads of Menkaure. He was 4th dynasty. So you have something like this, the triads of Menkaure, which are as damn near perfect as you can get, and at the same period you have these alabaster vases, which are very, very imperfect. You don't see the recreation of things like the schist disc and that other stoneware in later periods of Egypt. So that technology or ability seems to be lost, but the ability to work granite I keep pulling it up, but you know, that statue of Ramses that I'm showing you, and there's many other granite statues of Ramses like that, is still around. It's just very hard to reconcile these vastly different degrees of quality, all seemingly existing in the same time, and all seemingly being contemporary. I don't see this huge case for inheritance that Ben sees. And it's pretty clear to me that, you know, those inner 90-degree corners of those sarcophagi, right? The rate of removal that you see in core number 7 and in other areas, we can't even achieve that today. It's obviously not achieved by a Copper Age civilization. And yet you have clear evidence of them being a Copper Age civilization with those alabaster vases. And then it's just really hard to reconcile. I'm trying to articulate clearly my beliefs and establish a baseline here, and honestly, I'm having a tough time doing so. If anyone wants to call in, please call in. I don't know where my chat window is here. Let me make sure I'm still live, actually. I assume I am, but I don't see my chat window. Check the chat in here. Yeah, I would love a call in, you know, have a conversation about it. Share your opinion. Maybe you can, you know, offer your thoughts and help clear up my own thoughts. Can't stay. I'm hammering in a fence. Well, good luck with that. Keep those crazy neighbors away from you. Yeah, I'm still alive. Excellent. So yeah, again, triads of Menkaure, 4th dynasty here. This is a 4th dynasty, and there's multiple different triads of Menkaure. If you look here, these are different hats. Or is that the same one? I don't know. There are, let's see, there's one with the lady in the middle. Here we go. This is 4th dynasty work. Same time period as the Great Pyramids. We don't see any more of the vases, any more of the stoneware being created in the 4th dynasty. They were all pre-dynastic, so before even the 1st dynasty. But they still had the ability to do this. They still had the ability 1,000 years later, or they regained the ability 1,000 years later to build this, to create this. So that's one thing that we definitely do see, is that these abilities to create this stuff, they come and they go. It popped up in India 1,500 years ago or so. It popped up in Egypt 3,200 years ago, and it was there 4,500 years ago. You have it in Sumeria 5,500 years ago. Rome, like I said, lost the ability to work granite for over 1,000 years. One of the greatest empires to ever exist lost the ability to work granite for over 1,000 years. And we haven't seemingly recovered that ability to the same heights that they had in the ancient past. It's really hard to reconcile all of these things all at once, the vastly different degrees of quality. So, looking at this statue, could this potentially have been made with copper tools? I struggle to believe it. I really struggle to believe it. Copper is a 3 on the Mohs scale. Granite is an 8. It's such a vast difference. It's like trying to carve wood with a marshmallow, So what technology was used to create this? I really don't know. I'm at a loss, guys. I'm honestly at a loss. I tried to clear up my thoughts, and I'm more in the weeds than I've ever been. More in the weeds than I've ever been. I wish I had my chat here. I don't know how to studio mode potentially. No, that's definitely not it. I don't know what happened to my pop-out chat. That usually is with this. I like to be able to read the chat while I watch. So yeah, guys, if no one has any comments, critiques, anything to add, I think I'm going to keep this a short one. We're going to do a half-hour episode today because, yeah, I've lost myself here, man. I've lost myself. I've talked myself into circles here. I don't think that this stuff was inherited, though. I can solidly say that I believe there's a very solid case for Ramses 3,200 years ago to be able to create this in things like this. There's too many examples. I had pulled up before the show, and I've lost it amongst the tabs here. But an example of a statue that clearly had Ramses' face on it, but had no writing on it to identify it as Ramses. So, Ben's argument of, oh, he just loved to steal statues and write his names on it. Actually, I guess it doesn't debunk that, because no, it does, because it was a sandstone statue. It wasn't a granite statue, so it was one that clearly was made by Ramses, and not 12,000 plus years old. But he didn't write his name on it, so he's stealing other statues and writing his name on it, but not even stealing or writing his name on statues he created himself. Doesn't really fully add up. But yeah, I don't think these things were inherited. I think they were created by the dynastic Egyptians. I just don't know how, because they're not explained by a Copper Age civilization. And even if you want to argue that it was just a lot of hard work and a lot of time and effort that went into creating that statue of Ramses and all of the other statues of Ramses, great. How do you explain the schist disc? How do you explain the vases that have been getting laser scanned? How do you explain the core number 7 and the rate of material removal, which we can't accomplish today with tungsten carbide, and they're supposedly doing it with copper tools. It does sort of suggest that Atlantis, this super highly advanced civilization, may have existed, and there was recovery of tools and techniques that were repeatedly lost and repeatedly recovered throughout time. Because vase is more perfect than we create today, made with copper tools. I don't buy that. There's definitely some fishy stuff going on, but I do believe Ramses was capable of making this. I do believe Ramses was capable of making a lot of very incredible things, and if Ramses was capable of it, I see no reason to, not believe that this is also from the 4th dynasty, that these are, 5,500 years old from the Sumerians, but they weren't made with copper tools. So that's where I'm going to leave it. Thanks for tuning in, folks. Hopefully I get some call-ins next week. I'd love to have some call-ins, love to have some conversations with you guys. Again, you don't have to share your face, just share your opinion. But thank you guys for watching. I was really hoping I'd be able to be clearer in my statements and actually establish a baseline. I don't think I did, other than to say that I do believe those statues were made by Ramses and the other statues made by the other people. And I don't believe it was done with copper tools, because core number 7 clearly wasn't copper tools. The vases clearly weren't copper tools. Even though the vases stopped being made at least 4,500 years ago, you still see these tube drills all over in places that are more recent. So it seems they still had that ability that we don't have today, far after 4,500 years, and again in Egypt, 1,500 years ago. So what are the missing pieces here? I really don't know. There's some really big missing pieces. But thanks again, and I'll catch you next week. Peace out, fellas.